This is something I've hinted at here and there, on streams and on other videos I've done, but I figure it's probably about time I did a full thing on it. Before I did the political videos, before I made Learn to Code, or MasterCard is the final boss, or the Sargon guest spot, or the Total Biscuit Traps video, before Gamergate. This channel did anime reviews back in 2009, and we also started doing gaming playthroughs around 2012. That stuff's still up on my side channels, by the way, if you're interested in seeing it. But my point is, I was largely apolitical, and I traveled in apolitical circles. Myself and the two other people who ran this channel at the time, we had peers and friendships with some of the other small-time anime and Let's Play YouTubers out there. I was just your generic free speech center-lefty kind of guy, which seems to be the default setting for the non-politically inclined in Western countries. Gamergate changed that for me and for a lot of other people. I really think that was the point in which your average mid-20-something person learned that the establishment they, by default, supported as an apolitical actor, did not actually have their back the way that they thought. I think that's why the overwhelming opinion on the radical left now is that gamers are a right-wing group, even though the politics of gamers haven't really changed. Gamers have just realized that they've largely been abandoned by an enthusiast press that was supposed to stick up for them when the conservative-leaning Jack Thompson video games cause school shootings types show up. In my opinion, this is also why these people think that Gamergate caused Trump and Brexit, because Gamergate was the first real pushback against the ideological encroachment of the left, even if it was only contained within the specific subculture of gaming. It's probably more accurate to say that the mindset that caused Gamergate is the mindset that caused Trump and Brexit, and that mindset would basically be a willingness to oppose the tyranny of social justice at every turn. But since Gamergate was the first noteworthy opposition of the hegemon, everything is Gamergate. I titled this video Who I Miss because in opposing the hegemon, in questioning social justice rather than simply believing it, in not becoming more radical over time with my peers, I found that a lot of people turned on me quite quickly. I haven't even changed that much, not really, but because the Overton window has shifted so far to the left, and my colleagues have shifted so far to the left with it, to them I looked like an alt-right Nazi or whatever. Because I refuse to move from the center, and although I have a great online friend group now that I wouldn't trade in for anything, and I have a great community in my Discord who are always amazing pals to hang out with, I can't help but wonder why everything went so wrong with the people that I used to run with. It's my guess that if you're even watching this video, you've probably lost some friends or family members to Trump derangement syndrome. I'm not even a diehard Trump fan, but because I don't think he's Satan, I guess I'm Satan now. Here's an example of what I mean. I made a video about Charlottesville back in 2017, titled The Moral Equivalence Between the Alt-Right and Antifa. In it, I spoke about two people that I really looked up to from the Let's Play days, Casey of Born Losers Gaming and Rick from the D-Pad. I knew them to be reasonable people, and I figured that I could politely disagree with them. I devoted part of the video replying to some of their tweets, and saying what I think they got wrong, and they both blocked me for it. But it's not just them. Black Light Attack, who I both looked up to and was once friends with, created what I think was the first ever Let's Play of a Pokemon Nuzlocke game back in 2011. Up until him, the Nuzlocke format had been confined to comics and stories, but he was the first to try to do it in a Let's Play. And not only did his Nuzlocke of Pokemon Leaf Green become the #1 search result for Pokemon on YouTube at that time, it also included a lot of edgy jokes that his social justice-aligned current self would most certainly not approve of.
Now this is, I believe, where we find Fly. Oh, I won't tell anybody. Hey, everybody, there's a crazy bitch handing out TMs over here. Hey, guys, hey, you guys that look like rapists. What? Are you retarded? Are you actually retarded? I see your Dodrio and I raise you a Thunderbolt, and one-shot you when I'm a level lower. Get raped! I love me some Stallone in general. I love the Rambo movies. So good. I mean, watching them nowadays, Freudian slip, maybe.
And of course, there's Spoonie, the guy that inspired the three of us to even start doing anime reviews a decade ago in the first place. I told the story of our almost crossover with him in a previous video, but the short version is, Nicole set it up with him, we co-wrote a script with him for Tekken the Motion Picture, we were set to shoot it at Con Bravo, but Channel Awesome told him at the last minute that he couldn't cross over with people not on that guy with the glasses anymore. This event was one of the many seeds that caused their split years later. But Spoonie's videos had no problem embracing the edgy humor of the early 2000s.
For those of you who can't speak Latin, the chorus is saying, real gay, sissy gay, 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 sissy gay, gay, butt sex, astroglide, glory hole balls, teabag. Okay, I'm done. I'm not gonna harp on the gay thing. I was just fucking around. I mean, really, they're more emo than gay anyway. And sissies, leather-wearing sissies too. My forehead hurts.
Even as he morphed into a complete SJW cuck later on. In fact, it's telling just how many of the angry reviewers of internet yesteryear turned out to be complete losers. How can you possibly be pro-political correctness, pro-censorship SJWs, when you built your brands on being irrationally angry at games and movies? Watching these people rail on about angry gamers or Trump supporters or whatever just screams to me that they no longer desire or value what little relevance they still have. And it's not just creators either. If you are a YouTuber or whatever and you're watching this video, how many of you have lost a viewer or a fan because of a political stance you took? Or even worse, because you refused to take a stance? I know I have. Just off the top of my head, Relin Serrano, one of my oldest viewers, tried to get my Patreon taken down, back when Patreon was relevant. I can remember many old commenters on the anime reviews turning around and telling me that I was a bigot because I reacted to the gaming industry's immense corruption by supporting Gamergate. Regardless of the facts, Gamergate was just about misogyny, and that was it. We can also throw Blaster Nation onto this pile, though this one people might not know quite as well. Brad Brown writes the social justice-y porn comic Rockcocks, which he abandoned the vastly superior webcomic Blaster Nation for. He still kept the Twitter name, though. And speaking of his Twitter, let's check it out. I loved Catherine and was hoping this remake would fix the one huge glaring issue with Erica's representation, but instead they made it far, far worse across 2 characters now. Fuck this series and this director. Throwing my special edition box in the trash. I refuse to play Persona 5 now out of principle. I regret the time I spent playing Persona 3 and 4 thinking this shit would get better, and I regret buying Super Smash Bros. Ultimate's Season Pass now. I will not be touching Joker at all. Fuck Katsura Hashino. I'm also seeing a lot of UGG Japan posts about this, and no, stop. This is Katsura Hashino. Yeah, there's a lot of shitheads like him there, just as there is in every nation, including mine and yours, but don't negate the great work of Japanese creators pushing positive LGBT+ representation. So, Blaster Nation, Brad Brown, the same man that wrote that 3-tweet whine? That's Donkey Kong, 4chan's V Tripfag. Yeah, this guy, his threads still float around 12 years later. Oh, give me a break. I have to choose between being a fag or having a tiny dick. Of course I'm going to fight against both choices. Really, Brad, I have my pronouns in my Twitter bio Brown. Being a fag is bad, eh? I see. Donkey Kong, V's very own epic fail guy, etc., etc. He also made some faggot album that nobody downloaded. Oh yeah, DK's album. The V albums are just a series of good video game songs and remixes slapped together semi-regularly by the community. But he did the first one, and he inspired the later V the musicals and whatever. Unfortunately, his original album was lost to time, but I remember it being filled with some pretty problematic stuff. For example, a stereotypically Asian accented voice that Brad put on where he played Sakurai, the game dev of Smash Bros. Geez, let's hope that never resurfaces or he'll be seriously dragged on social media by his new friends. But Brad isn't blind to this change that he's underwent. Just a few days ago, H-Bomber Guy put out a video on companies and brands capitalizing on progressive values and promoting themselves through manufactured outrage with alt-right types, and how easily that can swing the other way. Today, THQ Nordic is hosting an AMA on 8chan. Didn't you used to answer questions in Blaster Nation threads on 4chan? I did, sure. 7 years ago, when 4chan was a much different place and I was a much worse person. It's not something I would do today, or something I would do as the PR person of a major video games publisher on an infinitely worse website delisted from Google for child pornography. Hold up, this doesn't feel right. When you say, when 4chan was a different place, considering the context of how you feel about the chans now, it seems like you're saying 4chan was better back then than it is now. And you're also saying that you were a worse person back when you were DK, using this website back when it was better? So clearly it's not the chans that made you bad, whatever bad is. I don't know, this message just feels like the panicked deflection of a guy who understands that his SJW peers will throw him under the bus at even a hint, a whiff of sin, even if it's 12 years old. 4chan wasn't so bad back then. Also, I've gotten a lot better. I wouldn't do it now. Also, I wasn't a PR person for a studio. Please don't excommunicate me. It seems like this sort of thing has happened to everyone, you know? People I knew personally, people I looked up to, people who looked up to me, it doesn't matter. I can still find examples of all of them being edgy shits on 4chan or Newgrounds or whatever back in 2009, but nowadays they're virtue signaling on Twitter, creating sterile, politically correct content that slowly alienates what's left of their fan base, and desperately trying to scrub the collective internet consciousness whenever their old misdeeds resurface, lest they be dragged on social media. I'm sure we all remember the early Game Grumps racial epithets, but just look at Aaron now. It's almost as if he's been neutered. Along with this leftward shift, the derangement syndrome, the abandoning of old contacts refusing to radicalize, and the disavowal of their less than stellar pasts, these people also seem to embrace a heavily amplified social media presence in lieu of actually creating the content they were known for. Everybody at this point knows about Spoonie's legendary downfall from YouTube titan to 18-hour-a-day Twitter complainer, but it's not just him. Black Light Attack moved out to San Francisco to work for Twitch, but he couldn't hold the job down because he couldn't wake up on time. He then tried to make it as a streamer, but eventually gave that up because he couldn't keep a schedule. And last I heard, he's moved back to his hometown. The people who ran Born Losers Gaming were probably the most talented small Let's Players I've ever seen, anywhere. One of them simply moved on and started his adult life. The other one occasionally makes promises of returning, but seems to be spending most of his time hosting local Smash Brothers tournaments, and slowly becoming more radicalized over time as he progresses through his English literature degree. And I'm not happy to say this, man. These people were my friends. These people showed genuine promise and talent, but they got sucked into their politics to the point that they now think it's a moral good to shun people who don't think like they do. And you know what? On the off chance this video gets popular and hits the SJW crowd, and the moral outrage mob comes for any of the individuals I've talked about, you want to know what they'll do? Make excuses about their past, talk about how terrible I am, and declare that they never really liked me to begin with. It's what Rick from the D-Pad did when they came for him. I've always been under the impression that the average person turns more conservative over time, not more radically left to the point that they self-censor and censor others and stop associating with those that social justice has deemed undesirable. I don't know. Maybe people just turn more authoritarian as they age rather than conservative. And because leftist authoritarianism is all the rage right now, that's where all these people are going. You might say, hey, maybe it's you, Dev. And maybe it is. Maybe I'm the delusional one. Maybe everyone else is the same as they were, and I've radicalized into the alt-right. It's possible. I mean, my considering the possibility that I've radicalized rightward, when they would never consider the possibility that they've radicalized leftward, might tip you off that it's not me, but whatever. How about this, though? When I stream on Twitch, one of the guys I sometimes do it with is named Jordan. Jordan's a good guy, friend of mine. I appreciate his company, but we are very politically different. The people on Twitch chat and Discord have jokingly given him the name of the Commie, because he's about as close to an actual communist as I've ever met IRL. And you know what? We're still friends. We coexist. I'm completely fine with being pals with people who have radically different worldviews than I do. As long as they're not violent, fine. It makes conversations interesting. And Jordan's a good guy. If I actually were the radical ideologue, would I really be chilling with somebody I directly oppose politically?
Jordan's moving to Venezuela experienced the true communism.
Venezuela isn't true communism. It's just a bunch of cuck communism coming from Cuba.
It's true socialism.
Yeah, it's bad socialism too.
The only kind. Hey, Jordan, I'm going to start calling you Jordan B. Peterborough.
Jordan
B. Peterborough?
Great, now I have to end my life off your roof.
This has been a pretty self-indulgent video so far, eh? Well, if it's bored you, I'm sorry. I think the pattern I've fallen into with my uploads recently is that when I talk about a specific situation, I end with a generalized rule we can extract from the situation. A bit of wisdom about what's going on. And if you're looking for that, then here it is. In one of the weekly sips a little while ago, I described a kid who was being punished by his university for his political beliefs. My advice to him in that video was to suck it up, hide his beliefs, get through school, get a job, get out of there. I now disagree with that advice. Firstly, if it's bad in the school system, it's going to be worse when you get a real job, with stuff like nannying HR departments and diversity training. Wherever you are, if you truly believe you're right, make your stand there. It might be costly, but that cost doesn't decrease from waiting, so you might as well do it now. But more importantly than that, when you run from what you're supposed to confront, you diminish yourself a little bit, and the challenge grows a little bit. I think we all know this intrinsically. For example, when you get a bill in the mail, it might be annoying, but the best thing to do is pay it off. That bill isn't just a piece of paper sitting in your mailbox. It's attached to social mechanisms meant to compel you to pay your bills. So if you let it sit behind your computer monitor on the bottom of a stack of papers for 3 years, not only is the amount you owe going to triple, but you're going to have other people appearing at your place physically to get you to pay it, or take you away for not paying it, depending on the circumstance. But this process happens internally, not just externally. We know that fears grow stronger and you grow weaker when you run from them. We also know that when you face your fears, you might not become less afraid, but you do become more resilient. This is the fundamental problem with safe space culture, by the way. People who continually retreat into a safe space never truly learn that they can withstand the threat their fears represent, and they end up spending their adult lives simpering away, waiting for an ever greater authority figure to protect them, whether that's the school, the corporate structure, or the state. And what's important about this is that when you shirk away from the challenge, you gradually become a part of the problem that you were originally tasked to face. In other words, when you force yourself to say things you don't believe, you come to believe the things you say. This is where I fundamentally disagree with Sargon. He thinks you can't change what a person believes. I think you can, but I think it's a very unpleasant business to do so. We all know that asshole kid in class who started off saying, well, I'll just write that paper to appeal to my SJW professor and pass the class, and he ended up becoming the most diehard SJW in the school, attending rallies, maybe even joining Antifa. And maybe some of us were that asshole once. You know what it's like, you can remember. Writing the paper. Your heart's not in it, you're just regurgitating words, you're easily distracted, you feel diminished while you do it. But when you're done, you haven't only written the paper. You've constructed an articulated argument that runs counter to what you actually believe, and your original convictions remain unarticulated. In essence, you've constructed your own political opponent inside of you, and the real you has no chance against it, because the ideas of the real you remain underdeveloped. And over time, people begin to believe what they've surrounded themselves with, because it's a whole lot less painful than admitting to yourself that you're a lying coward. Maybe this is because of school, like BLG. Maybe it's because of work, like Black Light Attack. Maybe it's because of social media echo chambers, like Spoonie or Brad Brown. But all of the people that I've talked about today, and I think really everyone that's been lost to Trump derangement syndrome over time, the real them, the person they used to be, back when they were apolitical, productive, and most importantly, happy, that real them is still there. But that version of themselves has become so rejected and abused that there's a good chance they're never coming back. When you compromise on your principles, and I don't mean in some small way to meet in the middle, I mean when you compromise your entire character in order to curry favor with an authority, you do something akin to shredding your soul. I don't believe in souls, but you know what I mean. You demolish a vital part of yourself. You dispose with what keeps you grounded. But even though it really sounds like it, it's not all doom and gloom. Whenever you listen to a self-help person, like a Mel Robbins or a Les Brown or whatever, they always talk about the power of faith and self-actualization, the ability to desire something from the bottom of your soul, aim at it, and achieve it through hard work. What any motivational speech describes is the inverse of what I'm talking about here. When you stand up for your convictions, even in the face of authority, you may pay a worldly price for it, a hefty price even, but you grow stronger. The indescribable part of you that's in the core of your being grows rather than dies. It's a fertilizing of the human spirit. This is a bit too much hippie bullshit for you, isn't it? Well, here's something concrete. At least, concrete in the best layman's terms that I can put. The neural pathways in our brain that manage imagination and the neural pathways in our brain that manage memory are linked quite strongly, meaning when you're forced to say or do or think something you don't believe, you break yourself down. But when you visualize something that you truly do believe in, you build yourself up. If there's ever been a reason that I oppose social justice warriors, then it is this. They don't just want your compliance. They don't just want your behaviors. They want your thoughts, your minds. I have seen people I consider to be far greater than me become diminished beyond belief by their compliance, by their I'll just do it once and then it'll be okay attitude, like an alcoholic or a drug addict or something. And now their personalities are completely subsumed by their politics, just like an addict's personality is completely subsumed by the addiction. That will never be me, and I hope it is never you too.